March 16, 1938, 2,300 hours. St. Ermin's Hotel, Westminster, London. The crystal chandeliers in the ground floor bar cast dancing shadows across polished mahogany as a waiter delivered champagne to table 7. The floors above, couples retired to their rooms, the soft creak of Victorian floorboards following them down carpeted hallways. For floors up, in a locked suite that wasn't listed on any hotel registry, Major Lawrence Grant carefully stacked wooden crates marked agricultural equipment. Inside each crate, demolition explosives, detonators, and incendiary devices, enough to level half the block. Before we dive deeper into this incredible true story of deception hiding in plain sight, take a moment to hit that like button if you are enjoying this journey into history's most audacious secrets. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss these forgotten tales of World War II, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from tonight. Whether you're in Manchester, Melbourne, or Montreal, we'd love to hear from you. Your support keeps these stories alive. The hotel guests sleeping 3 floors below Grand's explosives depot had no idea they were lying beneath Britain's newest weapon against Nazi Germany. The well-dressed gentlemen in the corner booth discussing vintage wines were actually MI6 officers plotting sabotage operations across Europe. The elegant woman checking in at reception was Marjorie Max, MI6's chief recruiter, arriving to interview a potential spy in room 47. And in that moment, as champagne glasses clinked and laughter echoed through the bar, Britain was perfecting something the Germans would never discover: the art of hiding everything in plain sight. By 1938, British intelligence faced an impossible problem. War with Germany was inevitable. MI6 needed expanded facilities for its newly formed Section D, tasked with sabotage and subversion operations. Standard military thinking demanded remote compounds, barbed wire, armed guards, isolated facilities where sensitive work could proceed behind walls and checkpoints. The Americans would later follow exactly this doctrine, establishing Camp X on 275 acres of isolated Ontario farmland in December 1941. Wilderness in every direction, total security through total isolation. But London in 1938 offered no wilderness. The city sprawled in every direction, dense with civilians, watched by foreign agents, surveilled by diplomats from every nation in Europe. German intelligence had networks throughout Britain. Establishing an obvious military facility would have been like hanging a sign reading "Secret Operations here." Major Grant needed something different. Not isolation, but camouflage. Not invisibility through remoteness, but invisibility through ordinariness. He needed a place where intelligence officers could work surrounded by civilians who would never suspect what was happening around them. St. Ermin's Hotel sat precisely 400 meters from MI6 headquarters at 54 Broadway. The War Office lay a 5-minute walk to the east. The Houses of Parliament dominated the skyline to the south. In the heart of Whitehall, Britain's government district, the hotel occupied perhaps the worst possible location for a secret facility, which made it, perversely, the perfect choice. Intelligence officers walking into St. Ermin's looked exactly like what they were supposed to be: government officials meeting for drinks, diplomats conducting informal negotiations, civil servants escaping their offices for lunch. The hotel didn't hide them, it made them invisible by making them ordinary. The building itself had been constructed in 1889 as service apartments, designed with self-contained suites lacking kitchens. This architectural quirk meant each floor could be converted into offices with minimal modification. The grand entrance featured a tree-lined courtyard that screened the front doors from street view. Inside, multiple staircases and a labyrinth of corridors allowed different sections to operate without encountering each other. Victorian luxury had accidentally created the perfect infrastructure for compartmentalized intelligence work. Grant requisitioned the entire 4th floor in March 1938. His staff moved in crates of explosives, communications equipment, filing cabinets stuffed with operational plans. 3 floors below, hotel guests continued their stays, completely unaware. The dining room served breakfast while agents plotted bridge demolitions. The bar poured gin while officers reviewed sabotage techniques. The chambermaid who cleaned room 47 never questioned why it was always locked. She assumed it was being renovated. In reality, it contained enough classified documents to compromise every MI6 operation in Western Europe. The system worked because it exploited a fundamental truth about human perception: people see what they expect to see. A luxury hotel in Westminster was supposed to contain diplomats, politicians, businessmen. When intelligence officers walked through the lobby carrying briefcases, guests assumed they were lawyers or civil servants. When men in expensive suits held intense conversations in corner booths, patrons thought they were discussing contracts or politics. The context provided the cover. St. Ermin's wasn't hiding spies. It was explaining them away as something mundane. By July 1940, with France fallen and Britain standing alone, Winston Churchill made the decision to consolidate various sabotage and intelligence sections into a new organization. The Special Operations Executive would coordinate resistance movements, conduct sabotage, and support guerrilla warfare across occupied Europe. Churchill held the founding meeting at St. Ermin's Hotel. In a fourth-floor suite above paying guests, he authorized what he called ungentlemanly warfare. The SO would set Europe ablaze, and it would do so from a Victorian hotel where anyone could walk in off the street and order afternoon tea. The hotel's transformation was complete by autumn 1940. The SO took over additional floors, operating under the covered designation Inter-Services Research Bureau. Staff carried credentials identifying them as statistical researchers. Their actual work involved recruiting agents, planning operations, developing specialized equipment, and coordinating with resistance movements. Ian Fleming, naval intelligence officer and future creator of James Bond, frequented the Caxton Bar. Noel Coward, serving as an intelligence asset, held court at his usual table. Kim Philby, the Soviet double agent who would later betray dozens of operations, walked freely through the corridors. The Germans never identified St. Ermin's. Abwehr intelligence officers knew the SO existed, captured agents, revealed the organization's name under interrogation. German analysts knew British intelligence had headquarters somewhere in London. They searched for it constantly, analyzing aerial photographs, debriefing defectors, tracking suspicious activity. But they were looking for a facility that matched their conception of intelligence infrastructure. A compound, a military installation, something that looked like their own intelligence headquarters. They never considered that Britain would hide its most sensitive operations inside a functioning civilian hotel in the center of London's government district. The Luftwaffe bombed buildings within 200 meters of St. Ermin's during the Blitz. The hotel survived, whether through luck or because German target planners had never flagged it. Civilians died in neighboring buildings, office blocks burned. But the hotel remained miraculously untouched, its windows intact, its Baroque facade unmarked. And throughout the bombing, intelligence officers continued working in the upper floors, coordinating operations across occupied Europe, while guests 3 floors below sheltered in the basement, unaware that the greatest secrets of the war were being kept directly above their heads. The real genius of St. Ermin's wasn't architectural, it was psychological. Major Grand understood that effective concealment isn't about making something invisible. It's about making it unremarkable. A secret facility in the countryside draws attention by its very isolation. Armed guards raise questions. Barbed wire suggests something worth protecting. But a hotel in Whitehall, hotels were supposed to exist in Whitehall. Government officials were supposed to meet in hotels. The presence explained itself. The cover wasn't elaborate. It was barely a cover at all, it was simply context. While St. Ermin's served as operational headquarters, the SOE faced an even more complex challenge. Training thousands of agents for operations behind enemy lines required facilities that could teach weapons handling, demolitions, silent killing, parachute insertion, and resistance to interrogation. Standard military doctrine demanded purpose-built training camps with specialized infrastructure. Instead, Britain scattered its spy schools across country, houses throughout England and Scotland, hiding the war's most critical training program inside the aristocratic estates of the British countryside. In July 1940, the so requisitioned Wanborough Manor near Guildford as its preliminary training school. The Georgian Manor House, surrounded by Surrey countryside, became the entry point for potential agents. Recruits arrived expecting military barracks. Instead, they found themselves in a stately home with oil paintings on the walls and Persian rugs on the floors. Training included cross-country runs through the grounds, weapons instruction in converted stables, and evening sessions in the drawing room where instructors assessed how much alcohol students could consume without compromising operational security. A practical test: agents working in occupied France would need to drink with targets without revealing secrets. Those who passed Wanborough moved to Group B schools scattered across Hampshire's New Forest. The Bewley estate, owned by Lord Montagu, became the SOE's finishing school. 11 separate houses spread across 7,000 acres provided compartmentalized training facilities. The Rings served as headquarters. The house in the woods handled specialist instruction. Bournemans, Saltmarsh, Harford House, Blackbridge, Drokes, Vineyards, Warren House, and the house on the shore each accommodated different nationality sections. French agents trained in one house, never encountering Dutch agents in another. Norwegian commandos prepared for operations without meeting Belgian resistance fighters. Complete segregation created complete security. The system shouldn't have worked. These weren't military facilities. They were aristocratic manor homes, hastily converted for war service. Agents slept in bedrooms still containing family furniture. Training occurred in formal gardens and shooting ranges designed for grouse hunting. The estate gamekeeper, Nobby Clark, taught agents to live off the land by poaching Lord Montagu's deer and rabbits. Practical survival skills delivered through technically illegal means. But the estate's dispersed architecture created operational security through fragmentation. Unlike consolidated facilities where everyone shares common spaces, Beulah's scattered houses allowed perfect compartmentalization. The training itself achieved legendary intensity. Role-play exercises pushed students to breaking points. Instructors dressed in Gestapo uniforms conducted surprise midnight raids, dragging agents from their beds for interrogation sessions designed to replicate the psychological pressure of actual capture. Students learned to maintain cover stories under extreme stress. They learned that revealing nothing, not even obvious truths, was the only defense against skilled interrogators. They learned that the moment you start answering questions, even innocuous ones, you've already lost. Specialized houses on the estate taught specific skills. One property was furnished entirely in French style, with continental electrical fittings, French door handles, and furniture layouts matching typical French homes. Agents destined for France trained in these spaces until the environment felt natural. The attention to detail was extraordinary. A British agent fumbling with an unfamiliar light switch could trigger fatal suspicion. Sitting in the wrong chair at a French dinner table could mark someone as foreign. Bewley eliminated these risks through environmental conditioning. By the time agents parachuted into occupied territory, they'd already lived for weeks in spaces identical to where they'd operate. Further north, in the Scottish Highlands, the SOE established its paramilitary training schools around Arsig in Inverness-shire. Inverleith Castle, Arsig House, Meoble Lodge, and a dozen other properties became commando schools where agents learned demolition, assassination, and guerrilla warfare. The instructors included William Fairbairn and Eric Sykes, former Shanghai municipal police officers who developed close-quarters combat techniques fighting triad gangs in China. They were known as the Heavenly Twins. Their methods were brutal, practical, and effective. Fairbairn and Sykes concluded unarmed combat sessions with simple instructions. Break his arm, then kick him in the testicles, then run. They designed the Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife, manufactured by Wilkinson Sword and issued to British commandos worldwide. The knife's double-edged blade and needle point were optimized for a single purpose: silent killing. Thrust between the ribs, angled upward toward the heart, death in seconds without a sound. Gavin Maxwell, the naturalist who later wrote Ring of Bright Water, served as a small arms instructor at RSIG. He allegedly invented the double tap technique, 2 shots in rapid succession, to ensure the target stays down. Standard doctrine for professional assassination. The local highland communities maintained absolute silence about the activities occurring on the estates around them. These were Gaelic-speaking Catholic Highlanders who remembered, with pride, that they hadn't betrayed Bonnie Prince Charlie after the 1746 Jacobite uprising despite the £30,000 reward on his head. To centuries later, they maintained that same code of silence. German intelligence never identified the RSIG training centers. The Abwehr knew Allied agents operated with unusual skill. Captured commandos demonstrated combat training that rivaled Wehrmacht's special forces. But German analysts never traced that training back to requisition shooting lodges in the Scottish Highlands. The operational results validated the unconventional approach. Norwegian commandos, who trained at RSIG, executed Operation Gunnerside in February 1943, successfully sabotaging the Vemork heavy water plant in Norway. The raid, considered one of the most successful special operations of the war, prevented Germany from developing nuclear weapons. Joachim Ronberg, who led the mission, credited RSIG training with the operation's success. They'd learned to move silently through hostile territory, disable guards without raising alarms, and place demolition charges with precision under combat conditions. Skills learned in Highland shooting lodges translated directly to occupied Norway. By 1943, the SO training network spanned dozens of properties across Britain. Ringway, now Manchester Airport, housed No. 1 Parachute Training School. Agents conducted practice jumps over Tatton Park in Cheshire. A memorial marks the drop zone today. The thatched barn near Borehamwood operated Station 15, the camouflage section where staff replicated French clothing from newspaper photographs. Every stitch and button had to match continental patterns. They hand-sewed maps into silk underwear, created false documents that could survive Gestapo scrutiny, and developed booby-trap devices ranging from explosive bicycle pumps to fountain pens that detonated when unscrewed. Latimer House in Buckinghamshire operated Britain's most sophisticated prisoner interrogation facility from May 1942. Unlike traditional interrogation centers, Latimer eschewed physical coercion in favor of psychological manipulation. Colonel Thomas Kendrick's operation bugged conversations of over 10,000 German prisoners of war, recording more than 100,000 transcripts of unguarded discussions between captured personnel who had no idea their cells were monitored. Churchill authorized unlimited expenditure, the equivalent of £21 million today, to construct the M-Room listening facility. The complex became known as the cockpit for its central watchtower overlooking radiating corridors. The intelligence gathered at Latimer proved invaluable. German generals held in luxurious conditions at nearby Trent Park discussed military capabilities, technological developments, and strategic planning in conversations they believed were private. The transcripts revealed details about V weapon programs, German radar capabilities, and Wehrmacht operational doctrines that might otherwise have remained concealed. The generals weren't tortured or threatened. They were simply given comfortable rooms, good food, and the illusion of privacy. Then they talked, and British intelligence listened to every word. Throughout this elaborate network, the fundamental principle remained constant. Institutional camouflage provided better security than physical isolation. German intelligence spent the war searching for British training facilities that matched their conception of military infrastructure. They never found them because those facilities didn't match anyone's conception of military infrastructure. They were country houses, hotels, converted estates. Properties that looked exactly like what they'd always been, operating in plain sight while concealing some of the war's most critical operations. By war's end, Over 3,000 SO agents had passed through Beulah's finishing schools. Hundreds more trained at WWII. St. Ermin served as operational headquarters for networks spanning occupied Europe. The success rate tells the story. While many agents died in service, captured by the Gestapo, executed after torture, killed in action supporting resistance movements, the training programs produced operatives capable of surviving deep behind enemy lines for months or years. They conducted successful sabotage operations. They supported resistance groups that materially contributed to Allied victory. Odette Sansom, captured in France in 1943, credited her Beulah training with survival through torture at Ravensbrück concentration camp. She'd learned to maintain consistent cover stories under extreme pressure. Nancy Wake, who became the Gestapo's most wanted person with a 5 million franc price on her head, stated that Beulah's realistic training scenarios prepared her for the constant paranoia of living under false identity in occupied France. The training saved lives, not by making agents invincible, but by giving them the skills to survive impossible situations. The post-war revelations about these facilities shocked even British intelligence personnel who'd worked at adjacent sites. So effective was the compartmentalization that many SOE officers never knew the full extent of the organization's training network. The Montague family learned about Beulah's wartime activities only after V-Day, when tongues loosened at celebration parties on the estate. When Latimer House was sold in the 1980s, the property conveyance included a clause prohibiting any disturbance of a secret tunnel behind a basement wall for 50 years. A restriction that expires only in 2034. The techniques pioneered at these facilities influenced post-war special operations training worldwide. The Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife remains standard issue for British Special Forces. The double-tap assassination technique, taught at WWII, became doctrine for military and intelligence units globally. The realistic interrogation resistance training developed at Beulah forms the basis for modern SERE programs: survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The legacy persists in every Special Forces unit that traces its lineage to World War II. But the real lesson wasn't about cows or dummy aircraft. It was about the fundamental nature of deception in an age of total war. Britain succeeded not by hiding its decoys in remote locations, but by embedding them within the ordinary fabric of rural life. The Germans expected British deception to look obvious, perfect military installations that revealed themselves as fakes under scrutiny. Instead, Britain gave them messy, improvised airfields that looked exactly like requisitioned farmland, because that's what Britain's real airfields looked like in 1940, hidden not through elaborate camouflage, but through the simple expedient of appearing perfectly ordinary. The Luftwaffe couldn't identify the decoys because they were looking for deception. What they should have been looking for was authenticity. And sometimes, the most effective lie is the one that looks exactly like the truth everyone expects to see.